Tonight, calm stories over rainy Minecraft, and everyone asks the same quiet question. Am I overreacting? You decide. First up, my manager found my resignation letter 3 weeks before I handed it in and said nothing. I thought she was waiting to bury me. I was wrong. Here we go. I left my resignation letter in the printer. Not the shared one by the lifts, the little one in my manager's office, because mine was out of toner and hers was closer. I realised about an hour later, went back, and the tray was empty. She was at her desk, working, and she did not look up. I told myself somebody in the print queue had grabbed it by accident and binned it without reading. I gave myself 3 weeks to line something up. Those 3 weeks were the strangest of my working life. On the Monday, she moved me off the account I had been drowning in and gave it to the new starter. On the Thursday, she signed off a training course I had asked for twice and been refused twice. The week after that, she put my name on a project that ran into next spring, which is the kind of thing you only put a name on if you expect the name to still be there. So I decided she had read it and that this was the slow version of being managed out. Give her the good news first, make the leaving look like my idea. And by the time I handed it in, she would have a file thick enough that nobody would ask a single question. I stopped speaking in meetings. I started saving emails to a folder at home. On the Tuesday, I finally handed it in, printed on my own printer this time. She read it twice. Then she opened her desk drawer and put a second copy on the desk beside it. Same letter, same date, 3 weeks older, folded once. She had read it the day I left it in her tray. And what she did with it was go through every reason in it, one at a time, and quietly try to fix them before I ever said them out loud. The account was reason 1. The course was reason 2. Being handed nothing that lasted longer than a month was reason 3. She never mentioned it because she said the moment she mentioned it, it would become a counter-offer, and I would have had to defend a decision instead of just changing my mind about it. She asked me if any of it had worked. I told her the truth, which was that I had spent 3 weeks reading kindness as a trap. I did not withdraw the letter that day. I withdrew it 11 days later, after I'd gone to the interview and turned the job down in the car park. That story ends there. She kept the first copy in that drawer the whole time, and she never once used it. She says it is still in there, and I have never asked her to take it out. There is one good chair in our office, and every morning I find it back at my desk with the seat height wrong. The lever is run all the way up, and the back is set straighter than I would ever leave it. The first time I thought I had knocked it while packing up. The next week the armrests were turned out too, and I had not done that. By the third Monday I was checking the chair before I took my coat off, and it was wrong again. The answer seemed simple at the time. Somebody on the late shift was helping themselves all night and never put it back the way they found it. Everyone else has the flat blue chairs that squeak. I had waited 3 years for this one, and it had been mine for barely a month. I ran a strip of masking tape down the post and drew a line where it met the collar. The next morning, the line sat a few inches above the collar. Whoever it was, they were taller than me. So I stayed. On a Thursday, I sat at the far end of the floor with my lamp off. At 10, the night security man came up in the lift, pushing a chair ahead of him. He swapped it for mine without looking around and took mine back down with him. I sat in the one he left behind. The backrest folded flat the moment I leaned on it. The office manager was not surprised when I asked her. She has known about that backrest for 2 years, and she told me the rest by the kettle. He works the night desk from 8 until 7, which is 11 hours in the chair I had just tried. He has done 506 of those nights. Then she turned her screen round and showed me the request. One night desk chair, opened and closed and opened again, never signed. She has never mentioned it to facilities, or to his manager, or to him. She said the chair is in the building either way, and it does more good at night. I took the tape off. Now I run the seat up and set the back straight before I go home, and I leave it where he likes it. It is wrong for me for a minute every morning, and then it is not. That story ends there. We have never spoken, and the good chair has never once been late back. My parking bay is number 9, right by the door, and every Tuesday there is a silver estate car sitting in it. Nobody has ever left a note on it, and nobody has ever mentioned it to me. The first Tuesday, I assumed somebody had come in for a meeting and taken the nearest space. The week after, the same car was there, same bay, same crack across the wing mirror. By the third one, I was looking for it as I came through the gate. On the other 4 mornings, bay 9 sat empty, exactly the way it is painted to. For a while, I had it worked out. One of the sales lads talks about that yard like he owns it, and I decided he had invented a rule where the good bays go to whoever wants them most. So I parked at the far end on Tuesdays, walked in with a wet shoulder, and built a quiet little case against him. In February, I came in at 7:15 and sat in my own car with the engine off. At 20 to 8, the silver estate turned in through the gate and took bay 9. He got out and he did not go inside. He went round to the passenger door and opened it, and then he stood there holding it. The receptionist told me the rest because it was obvious I had no idea. The woman climbing out of that car has worked in our office longer than anybody in the building. Her hip has been going for 2 years, and on the bad mornings, the far end of the yard is beyond her. She had started talking about dropping to 3 days a week rather than say why. He heard her say it once, in the kitchen. The receptionist had walked the yard herself once, counting 410 steps from the far corner to the front door. It rained hard the Tuesday after that. I watched from the window on the stairs. He stood at the passenger door with the umbrella held out over the gap, soaked down one side, while she got her stick sorted. He was in no rush at all. I park at the far end every Tuesday now, and I've stopped counting it as something lost. She still does her long day, and she still tells everybody she is perfectly fine. That story ends there. He is still the loudest man on that team, and I've stopped minding one single thing about him. In 4 years, my colleague has never made a round of tea for the office. She makes one for herself at 3:30 every single day. Our floor runs on the tea round. You fill the kettle, you take orders, you carry 6 muds back, and nobody keeps score out loud. She has never taken an order. In her second week, somebody asked her, and she said no thanks in a friendly way, and that was the end of it. By her second year, people had stopped asking. By her third, they had started mentioning it in the stairwell. So we decided she was a taker. She used our kettle, our milk, our tea bags out of the shared tin and gave nothing back to the room. Somebody put a sticky note on the fridge about the milk, and everybody knew who it was for. I was one of the people who thought the note was fair. Then one Thursday, I stayed at my desk instead of going to the meeting. At 20 to 4, she came out of the kitchen with a tray, and there were 11 mugs on it. She went past the lifts and down the back stairs, and I followed her at a distance, feeling ridiculous. The warehouse doors were propped open, and the men already had their hands out. They did not look up, and nobody thanked her, because it had stopped being the sort of thing you thank a person for. Their break is 15 minutes, and the kettle down there sits at the far end past the racking. By the time you walk it, boil it, and walk back, the break is gone, so she boils it upstairs instead. The supervisor saw me standing there and showed me the door frame. There was a tally on it in chalk, kept by the men, 1 mark for every day she had done it, 841. He told me how it started. She had found one of his lads drinking water from a paint bucket he had rinsed out because there was no time for anything else. She asked him about it. Then she went upstairs and worked out the timings. I make the office round most days now. She still does not, and I have stopped explaining why to anybody who asks. That story ends there. The milk note came off the fridge that week, and nobody has put another one up since. My manager put in an expense claim for £4.20 of car park change. She earns more than anyone on our floor, and she filed it on a Tuesday like it was the most normal thing in the world. After that, I kept seeing her name on things. A bus fare in February, then a pack of pens she had bought herself for a workshop. Milk for the kitchen twice in 1 month, and a roll of tape that cannot have cost more than £1. The claims list goes round the whole department, and she was on it every single time. So I decided she was grasping. That is an easy thing to think about somebody on her money, and I settled into it fast. I had her down as squeezing the place for pennies, because nobody senior was ever going to pull her up about it. One lunchtime, I got out 6 months of those lists and went down them with a pencil. Her name was on every one of them. None of the claims were wrong, and none of them were big, and the whole lot came to £61.80. Then I knocked on her door and asked her outright. She said the list gets read out in the manager's meeting, and that people find the small ones funny. Then she told me about a lad on the apprentice wage a few years back who claimed his bus fare to a training day. Somebody read it out for a laugh, and the room laughed along. He never claimed for anything again after that, and he was the one who could least afford to stop. So now she claims for everything. Car park change, milk, pens, a roll of tape. If her name is on that list every month, sitting there beside the small stuff, then being on the list stops saying anything about a person. She told me all of it plainly, without making a speech of it, and then she went back to her email. I put in for a train ticket last month, and for a £2 tub of hand cream for the sink in the kitchen. Nobody read either one out. There are more names on that list than there used to be, and I have never heard anybody say why. That story ends there. She still parks in the same car park, and she still claims for it every single time. My old boss took 6 weeks to send a reference, and I nearly lost the job waiting on it. The new place chased him 4 times, and the answer came back the same every time. It was on its way. So I asked the people who had left before me, A woman from my old team waited 5 weeks and got hers the day before she started. A man from accounts said his turned up so late his new boss had stopped asking. Nobody could name one that landed on time, and every one of them got it in the end. By the 3rd week, I had him worked out. He was careless with paper, or he was dragging his heels on purpose. I said as much to my partner, in a voice I'm glad nobody recorded. My new manager gave me 1 more week, and after that he could not hold the job open. So I drove to my old car park on the Thursday and waited until his lights went off at 10 to 6. I asked him straight why 1 page had taken a month and a half. He said it was not 1 page. He said he would rather be late than useless, and then he apologized twice and got in his car. The letter came through on the Friday, and I asked my new manager to send me a copy. It ran to 1,240 words. Most of it was things I had forgotten. The Tuesday in the snow when 3 of us got in and the office opened anyway. The angry client I walked out to the car park with in the rain. There was a date beside everyone. I rang 2 people who still worked there, and both told me the same thing. He had come round with a notepad and asked what I was like to work beside. The last line is the one I keep. She is the person I would want next to me on the day it all goes wrong. I started on the Monday. I have never told him that I know what the waiting is. A friend of mine left that office in June and is still sitting by her phone, and I have told her to hold her nerve. That story ends there. He is the slowest reference writer in the county, and I would wait twice as long for the next one. I spent my last week at that job training the woman who was taking it over. Every time I stepped out of the room, she started the whole task again from the beginning. The first time I thought she had lost her place. I came back from the printer and her screen was sitting at the login, and she said she wanted 1 more look at it. Tuesday I went down for coffee and the invoice run was back at step 1 when I got in. By Thursday, I had stopped leaving my chair at all because it happened every single time I did. She never asked me a follow-up question either. She wrote everything into a notebook with a green cover, fast, and she closed it whenever I came near. The explanation I landed on was that she had me down as sloppy. 11 years at that desk, and here was somebody redoing my work behind me before I'd even cleared out my drawers. I got polite and quiet about it. I handed over the passwords and let her think what she liked. On the Thursday, I told her I was heading home early. Then I sat in my car in the lot for half an hour and came back up the stairs. The floor lights were off except over her desk. She was running the month-end close on her own, in the dark, with the notebook open beside her. She saw me and went red, and then she just told me. Every page had a tally at the top. She had run the payment file 31 times that week, alone, after I left the building. She said she knew I started somewhere new on the Monday. She said the first month of a new job is hard enough without your old one ringing you at 9:30 on a Tuesday. She had decided she would not call me, and the only way to keep that promise was to be able to do all of it without me. I sat down and we went through the 2 things she had wrong. Then I gave her my number anyway and told her to use it. That story ends there. She has called me once in 4 months to say the building changed its coffee and I had not missed anything. In 6 years, my colleague has turned down every shift swap I have ever asked her for, and she has never once said why. She says no kindly enough, then goes back to whatever she was doing. The first time, I needed a Wednesday for the dentist, and she said no before I got to the end of the sentence. Then it was a Saturday for a wedding, and a Sunday when my sister came up from the coast. After that, I started watching, and she never swapped with anybody else either. Not for holidays, not for Christmas, not ever. So I made her into somebody rigid and a little cold. She liked her week exactly as it was, and she would sooner leave me stuck than move one day of it. I stayed polite about it, and I stopped meaning any of it. In May, I tried to make it impossible to refuse. I offered her my Sunday for her Friday, wrote it out on paper, and left it on her side of the counter. She read it, folded it, and handed it back that afternoon without a word. So in June, I stayed back after we locked up, and I walked out with her to the stop by the depot. I did not ask why she would not swap. I asked how she gets home. She does not drive, and she never has. The bus to her estate runs Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, one in the morning and one at night, and that is the whole of it. Every day I had ever asked her for was a day with no bus at all. She told me looking at the road because she has been embarrassed about it for years. Nobody has ever thrown out the roster box in the office. Her name is in there for 22 years, and over 2 evenings I counted 3,168 shifts. Every one of them fell on a day the bus runs. On the oldest sheet, a manager had written one line, and it says, "Keep her on the bus days." I go to the rest of them first now. Thursday is the one day the bus runs, and she is off. So that is what I ask her for, and she has said yes twice. That story ends there. She still says no to Sundays, and I know now that it is the timetable talking and not her. The man at the end of my row has not gone home before 9 at night in all the years he has worked here. I finish at 5:30, and from the bus stop I can still see his corner of the floor lit up. For the first month, I assumed he had a deadline nobody had told me about. The deadline came and went, and the light did not change. In August, the whole team was on leave, and I called in one afternoon to find his coat on his chair at 7. By spring, I had stopped being curious and started being annoyed. I decided he was doing it to be seen. Our floor manager sits by the door, and I thought he wanted her walking past that lit corner on her way out. So one Wednesday I stayed on to see what a person does with 3 extra hours. By 6:30 he was not writing anything. He was going down a list on his screen, one row at a time, the way you do a job you have done for years. He noticed me at 8:30 and asked if I was stuck, so I asked him what the list was. He turned the monitor round so I could read it. Our badge system rounds the clock. Tap in a minute after your start time and it books you a full quarter of an hour late. Somebody has to open each one and approve it by hand before the nightly run, or the week closes wrong and the money is gone. His name sat in the approver column on every line, 4,140 of them going back 9 years. He was on hourly pay at 19, in a warehouse that rounded the same way. Nobody told him, and he was short every week for 2 summers before he worked out why. He said the correction takes seconds, and that asking for your own money takes most people a fortnight of working up to it. so he stopped making anybody ask. Nobody upstairs knows what that column is for, and he is not going to raise it. I asked him to teach me the screen instead. I take Thursdays now, and his list is shorter by the time he gets to it. That story ends there. He still stays late, and he checks my Thursdays behind me anyway, which I do not mind. Our fire warden counts the whole department twice on the pavement, and he will not let anyone back inside until he has. 40 of us stand in the car park in whatever we were wearing, and he walks the line with his clipboard down and then back up. The first drill, I put it down to nerves. We do them 4 times a year, and the November one came in hard rain, and he still did both passes while we stood there soaked. Last spring, the alarm went off for real, which happens about once a year here, a toaster on the 3rd floor. He counted twice while the engine idled at the gate. In February, he started the second pass from the far end of the line, walking back the other way, so nobody could be counted twice by accident. The explanation I settled on was not a kind one. He is quiet all year in his corner by the printers. This is the one morning he gets to tell a whole department where to stand, and I decided he liked it. This June, after the drill, I stayed out on the curb while he finished the paperwork. Then I asked him why he does it twice, and I tried to make it a real question. He sat on the low wall and told me about a job he had before this one. He was the warden there too, 26 years old and new to the clipboard. The count came out right that morning, and it was not right. A woman from the accounts office had gone down the fast stairwell and turned her ankle on the last flight. She sat on the landing and waited for somebody to come and find her. 20 minutes with the alarm still going. She was fine. She was back at her desk that afternoon and never made anything of it, but he was the one who had said the number out loud. He told me you only have to be wrong once to stop trusting your own counting. He has done the second pass at every drill and every alarm since, 19 years of it, across 3 buildings, 94 times. He still keeps us out there longer than anyone thinks is reasonable. I stand where he points now, and when he gets to me, I say my name. That story ends there. He signs the bottom of every sheet in full, first name and last, and files them where nobody has ever asked to look. My name badge vanished off the rack 3 times last year, and every time it was back on its hook by the next morning. Same badge, same bad photo, and a clip on the back that was not the one it left with. The first time I signed out a paper pass and forgot the whole thing by lunch. It went again in July, and the new clip was so tight I had to work at it with a thumbnail. So in November, I scratched a small X into the clip with a key, and there was no X on it when the badge came back. The same thing happened to a woman in payroll that month, and to one of the drivers. For a few weeks, I was sure somebody was borrowing them. My badge opens the stationery store and the archive, and one off the rack would not be missed until morning. I had even picked a suspect. So I asked the front desk to print every door my badge had opened that week. It ran to 2 pages, and all of it was mine except one line. 10 to 5 on the Tuesday, the basement corridor, while my badge was gone. I took the stairs down that afternoon and knocked on the workshop door. He did not look remotely caught. The door was already open, the radio was on, and 2 badges sat on his bench with their backs off. He keeps the clips in a shallow box, sorted by the size of the slot they fit. He swipes each badge on the basement door when he is done, he said, to be sure it still works before it goes back. Then he told me why he bothers. He was agency in this building before they took him on, and agency staff got no badge at all. Every morning he stood at the barrier and waited for somebody to let him through. He counted the mornings, and there were 141 of them. He said a cracked clip is how a badge ends up under a desk or out in a car park. Then somebody is standing at that barrier at 8:30, waiting to be let into their own job. Mine breaks more than most, he told me, because I pull the lanyard off over my head. He was right, and he was nice about being right. That story ends there. My badge still has his clip on it, and I take it off one hand at a time now. One of the lads on our floor turned up to a filthy workshop job in a shirt that had been ironed. Creases down both sleeves, collar flat, in a place where everything you touch leaves a mark on you. The joke was older than me. Somebody had written the manager on his locker in marker years back, and nobody ever cleaned it off. On stripped down weeks, when the rest of us wore our worst overalls, that collar still sat flat under his. It took me until my second winter to spot that it was only ever Wednesdays. So I decided he thought he was a cut above the rest of the floor. He was quicker on the paperwork than anybody, and I reckoned the shirt was him saying so. I joined in with the jokes. I asked him in the tea room once, and he said he had somewhere to be after. That was the whole answer. So I read the clock-out sheet in the office, which I had no business doing. Every Wednesday for a year he was through the door at 5:02, and every other day he stayed as late as any of us. In March, a late part came in for one of his jobs, with an address across town on the docket. I ran it over on my way home. It was a bungalow with a low gate, and his van was on the curb. His mother had the door open before I reached the step. She set the part on the hall table and told me he came straight from work every Wednesday and that she liked to see him smart. She had told him years ago that a man in a pressed shirt is a man who is doing all right, and she knew fine well it was daft. She said she was too old to be talked out of it, and he had stopped trying. There was a calendar on her kitchen wall with a cross on every Wednesday. She said the old ones were in a drawer, going back 9 years to when his father died, 461 crosses. She had counted them more than once, and the only gaps were flu. The lads still call him the manager. I never passed any of it on. On Wednesdays, I take the filthiest jobs off his bench before 4, and he has never asked me why. That story ends there. He has never mentioned it to me, and I would notice now if that crease was missing. A man on my team has skipped the works night out 12 years running. The year I finally organised it myself, he did not even reply to the invite. He answers everything else. Send him a question at 4:30, and there is an answer before 5. But the December email went out, and his name sat in the maybe column right up to the day. I went digging in the shared drive and found 9 old seating plans. He is on every list and crossed off everyone. He is not in a single photo from the bowling year. One woman told me he turned up once years ago and left before the food. I decided he did not think much of us. The team had stopped asking him properly, so nobody had to hear him say it out loud. So I opened the out-of-hours rota, which puts one name against every night of the year. His name was in the cover column for the night of the party. It was there for the night before it as well. At 9 that evening, I walked out to the pub car park and rang the out-of-hours number. I was expecting an answer phone. He picked up on the second ring, said the name of the office, and asked me what had broken. On the Monday, I sorted that whole cover column before I did anything else. His name came up 1,207 times. Nobody else on the sheet was anywhere near it. Then I went and asked him, rather than pretend I had not rung. He was straightforward about it. He books the party night every December, before the date is even set, and he takes as many of the ordinary ones as they will give him. Whoever is in their first year should not be the one at home holding that phone. He said the first one is the one that counts, because it is where you work out whether you like these people. His own first December, he had the phone. He stood outside the pub with it, and then he went home. I offered to take next December off him. He said no cheerfully, and asked me to keep sending the invite because he likes knowing where we are. That story ends there. The pub is booked again, and the lad who starts in October will be inside with the rest of us. The pool car came back every Thursday with 14 more miles on it than the job needed. I run the fleet, so odd numbers land on my desk, and that one sat there for weeks. The first time I put it down to a wrong turn. The next week the gap was the same again, down to the mile. By the fourth Thursday, I had stopped guessing and started writing it in the back of my diary. Every other day of the week came back clean. It was only ever Thursday, and only ever that one car. So I built a picture of a man doing his shopping on our fuel. He signed the car out himself, and he wrote a tidy number on the booking sheet, and I decided the tidiness was the tell. I had the conversation half planned. I even knew which folder I would carry into it. Instead, I stayed late on a Thursday in February and stood by the gate in my coat. He pulled out at 9:10 with the youngest person on our team beside him, her rucksack on her knees. They turned left, away from the ring road, which is the long way round to anywhere. I asked her about it the next morning plainly, because I could not think of a kinder way in. She said the path behind the depot had no working lights since the end of September. She walked it twice in October, and the second time she came out onto the main road, half running, she never reported it. She mentioned it to him once, the way you mention a small thing you are embarrassed about. He never really answered her. He just started going out through the gate at the same time every Thursday, because that is when her late shift ends. He drops her at the station, which is the wrong way from his house. I went back through the sheets that night and added the whole thing up. 238 miles since November, all of it in the dark. I signed off every one of them. Then I asked the estate people about the lighting, and it took them until May. He still leaves at the same time, and he still turns left. That story ends there. The lights work now, and he has not shortened his route by a single mile. One woman holds the only set of keys to our building, and she has refused to have a second set cut for 11 years. She is the office manager, and she unlocks the front door at 8, never a minute earlier. We have all stood outside waiting on her. The morning her car would not start, 20 of us waited in the rain while she got a lift in. The facilities man left a key-cutting form on her desk one January, and it came back blank. Our director offered twice, kindly, and got a no both times. She only ever said she liked to do it herself, and then she changed the subject. I had her down as someone who liked being needed. A whole car park of adults checking their phones, waiting on one woman with a key ring. So in March, I set an alarm for 5 and went to watch. I parked across the road with a flask, feeling ridiculous. Her car was already in her space, and a light was on at the back. At 25 to 6, a woman came up from the bus stop, and the side door opened from the inside before she got near it. I gave it 10 minutes, then I knocked. The manager let me in without any fuss, and the urn had already boiled. She was at the little table with the woman who cleans our floor, and she found me a third cup. I asked the cleaner how long she'd been coming in this early. She said that bus is the only one that gets her here, and her shift does not start until 7. I asked what she used to do with the gab. She said she stood in that doorway, 85 minutes of it every morning, in the dark and in the cold most of the year. Then I asked the manager why she would not let anybody cut a second set. She said 2 sets means a rota. If somebody else can open up, then some mornings she is not the one here, and nobody else is coming in before dawn to put the kettle on. She said it was easier to just be difficult about keys. I still wait outside with everybody else, and I have not told anyone why. I leave a box of the good tea by the urn now, and neither of them has ever mentioned it. That story ends there. She is completely unreasonable about keys, and I hope she stays that way. There is a computer in our office that is 14 years old, and the woman who uses it has turned down a new one 3 times. It sits in the corner by the window, and you can hear its fan from the corridor. The first refusal was before my time, though people still bring it up. The second came when we moved floors, and she carried that tower down 2 flights herself rather than hand it to the movers. The third was this spring, when our new manager set a laptop on her desk like a gift. She thanked him warmly and never opened the box. There is tape over the socket with "Do not unplug" on it, and she checks it most mornings. I put it down to a fear of anything new, and I was not the only one. Our whole team waited on that one tower in the corner. Reports that took me minutes took her half a day, and I sat in meetings watching people sigh while she typed. One Thursday, I stayed behind and asked if I could watch her work for an hour. She said I could stay as long as I liked, and then she pulled a second chair over before I could find one. On the screen was a program that stopped being sold while I was still at school. It is the only thing left that opens our records for the small accounts, the ones too little to bother anybody. When the company bought the new system, moving those over cost money, and nobody ever signed it off, so they stayed where they were. Each time a machine wore out, somebody copied the whole lot onto the next one, and this tower is the second to hold them. 2,318 accounts, she said, and she knew that without looking it up. Then she opened a file from 2009, older than the tower it sits on, and turned the screen so I could read it. It was the garage that services our vans, the same family, going back further than my whole time here. She said that if the tower dies, those customers do not become smaller. They simply stop having ever been here at all. The laptop is still in its box under her desk. I have learned the boot sequence, and so has the apprentice, and somebody in IT has finally costed the move. That story ends there. The fan still sounds terrible, and I've stopped hearing it as a problem. I take the leaving cards round our office, and there is one man who has never signed a single one of them. 22 years here, and his name is on none of them. I always save his desk for last, so he has time. He says he will get to it in a nice voice, and then he does not. The card for the woman in accounts sat by his keyboard for 4 days and came back exactly as I handed it over. The one for the lad who moved north went the same way. 11 cards now, each with a clean white space where his name should have been. I put it down to plain rudeness. 10 seconds and a pen for people he had sat beside for years, and he would not spare it. In April, I stopped being polite about it. I set the card in front of him with the pen already uncapped and waited. He smiled, said he would rather not, and went back to his screen. In May, I ran into the woman who left us in March, in the queue at the chemist's. I asked how she was finding it, and she said the first weeks are fine because everybody texts and then everybody stops. She opened her handbag and took out an envelope, and the crease had gone white from being folded and unfolded. It was a letter from him, a page and a half, handwritten, posted 4 weeks after her last day. He wrote about the night she stayed until 9 to help him find an invoice that was not even hers, and about the way she answered the phone. She read it in the supermarket car park, and then she read it again. I asked him about it on the Monday, and he did not pretend. He said the leaving day takes care of itself with the cake and the flowers and everybody saying the kind thing at once. The month after is what nobody plans for, when the flowers are in the bin and the phone has gone quiet, so he waits and then he writes. He keeps the addresses in a notebook in his drawer, and he let me count the names in it, 148. I still take the card round and still set it in front of him. He hands it back with nothing in it, and I have stopped minding. That story ends there. He signs nothing on the day, and the post office does the warm part of it a month later. There is a man on my team who eats his lunch alone in his car every day, whatever the weather. He was already doing it before I started, and until this February, nobody had ever asked him why. My first winter here, I assumed he wanted the radio and half an hour of quiet. Then it snowed properly in January, and he still went out at 12:30 with his sandwich. In August, we had a party in the courtyard with good food and long tables. He was in the car park by 10 past. On his own birthday, somebody brought a cake in. He came back at 1 to find his slice waiting on the desk. The answer I landed on was that he could not stand the rest of us. He's polite about it, that was the thing. He answers everything. He covers shifts. He remembers how you take your tea. I told myself he had his reasons, and I stopped asking him to things. In February, I took my own sandwich out to the car park and tapped on his window. He jumped, which I felt bad about. Then he wound it down halfway and said hello, as if we were passing in a corridor. There was a textbook open face down on the passenger seat, with a yellow highlighter lying across it. He looked at it, then at me, and he told me the whole thing through the gap in the window. He left school at 16, 1 term short of finishing a course. His mother was ill, and the wage mattered more that year. He is 51 now. He signed up again, and he has been working through it one lunch hour at a time, 461 of them so far. He said he did not mind doing it at his age. He minded people watching him do it at his age. That was the whole reason for the car, and he seemed relieved to have said it out loud to somebody. I asked when the exam was. He gave me the date, and I wrote it in my own calendar and did not tell him I had. He still eats out there. I take mine to my car on Thursdays now, 2 spaces down, and we have never once talked about it again. That story ends there. He sits that exam in May, and I already know exactly where I will be parked at lunchtime. Our workshop radio has been tuned to the same station since before I started, and nobody is allowed to touch the dial. There is masking tape over the tuning knob with the foreman's initials on it. The apprentice reached for it in his first week, and 3 men said his name at once. A rep from head office went to put music on, and the foreman crossed the shop before the man had finished his coffee. A fitter turned it down for a call in March and forgot to put it back, and he heard about that for a fortnight. I had him down as a man guarding the one thing he still owned. Head office sets our hours, our targets, and our tea break. A foreman with nothing left to run will run something small. So I asked him about it at the end of a shift. He said the radio stays as it is, and then he asked about a job I had not finished. That was the whole answer, so I came in on a Saturday and turned it up. It was local sports commentary, a match across town. The caretaker came through with his bucket at 2:30, and he was still there when the match kicked off at 3. He told me the score without looking up, so I asked him why he leaves the workshop until last. He said his eyes went a long time ago, and this is the only station carrying the commentary. When I asked about the tape, he said that was the foreman's doing. So I asked the foreman on Monday. Somebody once left it on a music station over a weekend. He came in for a part that Saturday and found the caretaker mopping the same square of floor, waiting on a match he could not get to. He will not touch other people's things, and there is nothing on that dial he can feel. The tape went on that afternoon. The caretaker has counted every match since his sight went, and he lost the count once and took it hard. The foreman keeps it for him now, in pencil on the back of the fixture list, 1,331. He asked me not to make a thing of it, and the shop still knows nothing. I leave the volume where the caretaker likes it now before I lock up. That story ends there. The tape has gone grey and soft at the edges, and none of us has touched that dial since. There is a woman in our office who snatches up the phone before the first ring is finished. She does it for phones that are not hers too, from halfway across the floor, mid-sentence, with her sandwich still in her hand. The first week I thought she was just quick on her feet. Then I watched her leave her coat half off to reach a ringing desk by the window, and she got there in 4 steps. By the end of the month, I could hear her chair move before I heard the ring at all. She came late into 2 meetings that way, and she never once explained why. I put it down to showing off. We were a few months from a reshuffle, and I decided she wanted the manager to notice who cared the most. I went a bit cool with her, the way you do when you've made your mind up in private. So in February, I started beating her to it. I moved my hand near my phone and took every call on the first ring, mine and the 2 desks either side of me. I did that for a week. She said nothing, but her jaw went tight each time, and on the Friday I asked her plainly what I was getting wrong. She turned her monitor round so I could see it. It was the call log, sorted by a column I had never opened, calls that came in and ended before anybody picked up. Most of our customers are over 75. They dial, they let it ring twice, then they decide they have the wrong number and put the phone down. She had been pulling that report every Monday for 3 years. 4,211 calls had rung out and gone, and the numbers beside them almost never rang back. She scrolled down. Some of them had names written in her own shorthand because she had started ringing back the ones she could match. One was a man who had been trying for 9 days about a broken meter. Nobody asked her to do any of it. She told me she simply cannot sit and listen to a phone ring out. I take the calls near me now, first ring every time. She still crosses the floor for the far desks. That story ends there. Our office sounds odd to visitors because nothing in it ever rings more than once. I have stopped thinking of that as showing off. Body how Vordy EVE. Our supervisor sends people on training courses nobody asked for, and half of them have nothing to do with the job. I do stock records in a warehouse office, and in February she booked me on a forklift license. I am not allowed to drive a forklift, and neither is anybody else in that office. The lad on goods in got sent on food hygiene, and we do not sell food. The woman who does payroll came back with a first aid certificate and a key ring. 1 year she put the whole office through a spreadsheet course that 2 of us could have taught. The emails always landed in a clump, and it was always an afternoon. So I made her the villain, quietly. She was making the numbers look right for head office, and we gave up the afternoons for it. I keep the office diary, so I sat down with it and went back 4 years. Every course sat in February or March. Nothing in the summer, and nothing ever in October. That sent me to the filing cabinet by the window, the one I have no reason to open. The training file was near the back, and there was a letter from head office in the front of it. It was shorter than any email that place has ever sent me. Our site gets a training budget each year. Anything left in it on the last day of March goes back, and the next year's figure drops to match what we actually spent. Once that door shuts, it does not open again. Under the letter was last year's spend sheet, and the figure at the bottom was £8,941.60. I asked her about it while the kettle went. She said she had watched a budget get cut at her old site, and it stayed cut for the rest of her time there. So she spends every pound of it, and she spends it on things people carry out of the building. A license is yours, and a certificate has your name on it, not the company's. She said most of the people she has trained have gone on to better jobs elsewhere, and she was proud of that rather than sore about it. I have a forklift license I will probably never use at work. It lives in the drawer with my passport. That story ends there. She has me down for abrasive wheels in the spring, and this time I said yes before she finished asking. She body a body invoke. That's all for tonight. 21 stories, and every one of them started the same way, with somebody at work looking petty or cold or like they were keeping score. Almost none of them were. Most people are quietly carrying something they will never mention at their desk. Sleep well, and I'll see you in the next one. Good night.